Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can you hear me? I can't hear. Your
Morris,
mic
you're
is
on
all the way
mute.
up. Okay, I can hear
Oh,
you now.
I'm on mute. I'm sorry. Reverse. Let me go ahead and go off. Hold up real quick. Get back in. All right. So let me start that all over again. Welcome to another edition, to another installment of Hashtag Fade to Black. I'm your host, Donnell Lamont J. Morris, here with Seepaway, here with Anita Joe. Now, this is going to be a different start to the show. So let's go ahead. Let's dive on in. So the elections literally got me heated, literally got me thinking about a whole lot of things. Not just what the outcome is and what the outcome is going to be, but about how do we change our circumstances. Now, on this show, we have everybody with their different views on here. And I try to keep it to us, try to keep it professional and all that stuff. So I will say this. I do apologize because I really did get frustrated because I'm not gonna go too further what amongst us what we do with our group. I was frustrated seeing the last post. I was very frustrated because with this election going on, this shows what not voting looks like. This what shows when you sit on the sideline and you do nothing. You do absolutely nothing. I'm not saying all for Biden. I'm not saying that. I mean for Democrat or for Republicans. My issue is this. When you sit here and we know the deal, what is going on when we have everything that's against us, from crime to even just walking down the park without being called, have the police called on you because you're black. I understand and I get that. But if you just don't do your civic due, because when people hear vote, you think presidential. But if you actually look at the ballot and understand, I'm talking to the folks that probably never seen the ballot before. There are policies, laws that you may hate, like here in freaking Washington, they trying to bring sex classes all the way through kindergarten that you can vote on and say yes or no. So as much as I want to sugarcoat this as much as I can, that's my gripe. That's my gripe. No matter if you vote Republican or Democrat or just voted locally on the policies that you probably knew something about or barely even know anything about. But sitting on the sidelines and doing absolutely nothing is not going to, it's like, why in the world should we hear you now? So this is me sugarcoat how I really feel about the mayor and just coming off with it as saying it professionally as I can. So the floor is open.
Okay, I'll go. Good evening, everyone. I was one of the voters that decided that I would not mail in my ballot. Actually, myself and my mother, and we felt that the early voting would be a problem, that it could, in fact, not be counted for what it's worth. And so, with the high turnout rate of early voting, people standing in the line for 3 hours, 4 hours, 11 hours to vote, to cast an early vote, I felt that I would have a pretty good chance of getting in and out if I waited until the actual election day. And as it turned out, the polls opened at 7:00 a.m. and by 7:15, I had voted. I got in and got out. And actually, I was number 4 in my district. I mean, number 3 in my district. My mother was number 4. Having said that, there was something interesting on the ballot that I really had not heard anything about in all of the advertising for the election. And I have to agree with Darnell, the local policies is where you can make an impact. And one particular proposal, like I said, had not heard anything. And it wasn't until I got in the booth that I recognized this. And what they were asking the city of Detroiters to vote upon was whether or not law enforcement agencies will have to have a warrant to search your cell phone or other electronic devices. And the results overwhelmingly, Detroiters spoke up and said, yes, you need a warrant if you want to search my cell phone or other electronic devices. So that's just one piece of legislature that you could find yourself up against, not even knowing that it was on the ballot if you never go out and participate and see what's going on. Because in my city, I did not hear it. And I try to keep my ear to the ground, but I had not heard about that particular proposal. So it was important to protect ourselves as much as we can with that piece. And then the other thing is that the media, or those that can pay for media, are the ones that's going out front. We know that there are Democrats and Republicans and the Libertarian Party. I had 7 options or 7 candidates to choose for president yesterday. And the only 2 names that I recognized were the Republican and the Democratic Party. So I decided to do some research. I was like, I got 7. And I hadn't heard anything about these outside of Kanye West, and he wasn't on our ballot. And I really thought he had dropped out of the race. But come to find out that yesterday, November the 3rd, 2020, there was a total of 1,214 candidates running for the president of the United States of America. We had 1,214 choices to choose from that we knew nothing about. And one was an African-American female. So the media definitely manipulates us. And I'm wondering in my mind, how could the average citizen have heard about these 1,200 candidates, 1,200 plus candidates? How could the average person have heard, except that they have a big purse and can pay for radio, television spots? Now, I did come to understand that of those 1,200 plus, they were only on the ballots in some states. And that seems totally illogical, that if a person is running for the president of the United States, that maybe their purse didn't didn't span the whole 50 states, but they could be covered in, a few states and not in this state. And how could they ever even hope to win if it is not a national campaign? So it left me thinking that of those other 1,200 people, there probably could have been maybe one person that could have spoke to our interests. But because either their purse was too small or they were limited by the number of states that they could actually run in, we don't have a clue as to who they are.
Well, open.
I agree with Donnell, right? It frustrates me when people sit on the sidelines and do nothing and don't get involved in the political process, right? I get frustrated with that. I also happen to agree with Teach. I think that we're most effective, not on the national level, but on the local and international level. And right now, we've been so miseducated that most of our energies has been to, as Teach was saying, right? We've been miseducated to think that voting either for the Republican presidential nominee or the Democratic nominee is like the height and the most effective way to get involved politically in this country. Whereas it's really the least effective way, regardless of who is in office, right? All of our best scholars are showing that it hasn't brought about any fundamental systematic change. Once you have voted, right, the political process continues. I'll give you an example. Probably the most important legislation that affects Black people is H.R. 40, which is the bill that has been introduced by John Conyers every year since 1989, right, that would provide for the procedure that was used by the Japanese Americans to get reparations. It would provide for the same procedure. It would study the issue with the goal of putting forward in Congress the remedies. Now, this past 2 weeks was a major moment in the political process for reparations. The two largest reparations organizations in the United States that are involved in the political process had town hall meetings that had less than 50 people attend. They had asked the Black community to write letters and call their Congress people, right? Which didn't happen. So I'm like Donnell. When people sit on the sidelines and don't engage in the political process, right? Especially when even the parts of it that directly affect us, right? It's frustrating. And we're not doing anything at the international level. I spoke to the UN special reporter for minorities and racial discrimination this week, asking her, right, what the Black community needs to do. And she said something that was very interesting. She said that the United States is a party to the Convention on the Prevention of Racial Discrimination, but hasn't ratified it. And she was asking the questions, why didn't the Black community make that part, even question any of the presidential candidates to say, hey, if we elect you president, will you ratify this treaty, which will allow for individuals, groups, and us as a collective to now sue in the international courts for reparations? So because of our civil and political illiteracy, it didn't even occur to us to make that an issue in the campaign. So I happen to think, my personal opinion is, right now, we can be more effective at the local and international level. But the whole national presidential politics thing, right, has only just really divided us, divided the country, divided the Black community. People that were so-called friends, right, are canceling each other now. And we don't have any kind of independent vehicle for our own political agenda. And that's what this election really pointed out to me as the continuing problem that we have to work on.
Beast, got anything? You came in late.
Yeah. After hearing everybody, I kind of represent those stuck in the middle, because there is truth that you must vote. You must exercise some kind of right and moment of choice has to be executed. You have that right to do that. Now, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. That's still your decision as well. But if you choose not to do anything at all, like Safeway says, you don't have to vote, but you can still inform yourself. You can still help inform others. There's other means to exercise your vote or your quote unquote lack of vote. But the main thing is to get yourself involved, get yourself educated. And I think the main thing we can all agree on. No matter what you choose to vote for or choose not to vote for, get out there and understand what all goes into voting and what some of those votes would pertain to.
All right. I want to show this video by Mr. Cloyd Anderson, and then after we're done, I want to hear everybody's thoughts on it.
Teachers with the Black youth all together. You had a sense of community. You knew each other. You trusted each other. You worked with each other. You participated with each other. You learned how to buy from each other, to sell each other, to support each other, to care about each other, to love each other. When Black folks up in integration, Blacks never locked their homes. Understand the nature of race, which is economics. If you build the first floor, it's economic. Build your businesses and your industries. Control business and industry, and put that pulls in your money, and hold that money. And practice group economics with it. Arab and Asian money bounces 12 to 13 times what it leaves. Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black folk got to learn how to practice group economics. Black Americans spend every penny they get outside their own community. Then you take the money and the wealth that you get from that first floor and go to the second floor. The second floor is politics. You then take that money on the first floor and you control your politics. Black folk must quit allowing people to tell them to go out and vote. Vote for what? Nobody's going to do anything for Black folk in politics. Politics is controlled by money, major corporations who got the money. That's what controls politics. If you have no money, you have no say-so, you have no benefits coming. So you take your money and you control, and you take your money on the first floor, you buy every politician on the second floor. And then the politician you can't buy, you rent or lease them to get what you need. Then once you get the second floor under control with the politician, with your money, then you go to the third floor. The third floor is the police department and the court system. You take your money from the first floor and your politics on the second floor, and you control the court system and the police departments. Then the fourth floor that is media. You then take the money that you generate off the first floor from business and industries, and you go after radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, and cable systems, so that you can now inform and communicate with your own people. Right now, Black folk only control less than 35 thousandths of 1% of the media in the United States. Out of 12,000 radio stations, Black folk own about 75, 80. That's all. You own no cable systems. You don't have a daily newspaper. You have nothing of importance. You got about one Black TV station. And so you can't communicate with your people. You can't inform your people. You can't do anything. You can have Rush Limbaugh and all the rest of the guys talking about racism all day long and bad mouthing you, and O'Reilly. They can call Black folk all kind of names all day long. What are you going to do? You can't respond. You can't communicate with your own people because you don't have an economic base. 51% of all the prisoners in the United States are black people. You know, you only make up 12% of the population. That's no accident. It's because you don't control the economics and the politics. They're going to go after the weakest people they can get their hands on to incarcerate. That's the black folk. And what are you going to do in response to when they over incarcerate you? You're going to go out and have a march, a demonstration. We're going to march. March, well, who cares? There's a direct relationship between.
Floor is open. I'm just going to wait till here everybody else starts. I'm going to get mine. So what y'all think about that? What Claude Anderson was, I won't say saying, but preaching in that part of the documentary for Tariq Nasheed?
I believe he's absolutely right. You know, he's reiterating Booker T. Washington's model on self-sufficiency and owning your own business, acquiring land as a basis of power and respect. And he spelled it out simply. The problem is segregation. That was the problem. When segregation came, we divided up. We didn't see the value of being a community. We lost that value because and religion also plays a distinctive part in dividing and socializing the African American community. For the staunch Christians, when Islam or the Nation of Islam began to grow in the 60s, then it was, you practice, some type of religion. You can't say anything to my son. Don't you talk to my son? And, so there's the division right there in the community from one neighbor to the next. And so we lost a lot. I remember coming up and hearing about, because this was before my experience, where, the Black doctor lived next door. The teacher lived down the street. The nurse lived around the corner. The janitor lived, 2 doors down. Because of redlining, Blacks were forced to stay in the same neighborhood. So whether it was a doctor or a lawyer or a garbage collector, they lived on the same block. They went to the same church. But when desegregation came, they were able to move to other neighborhoods. They took on different religions. And people took on the attitude of the other. You're not like the other Negroes, or you're not like the other Blacks, or you're not like the other people, because you become self-aggrandized in your degrees, self-aggrandized in your profession, self-aggrandized because now you don't have to live on the block next to the garbage collector. You can go to the suburbs and live next to the other people. So he lays out a good plan. Had we stayed segregated, that plan may have had an opportunity to work. But because we went through desegregation, our minds changed. And now we feel that we've made it. We feel that we're no longer second-class citizens because now we can do everything that the majority does.
Floor still open.
I'm like Teach. I agree with some of his points. The only thing I kind of disagree with is the structure that he feels as though we should move forward with. I agree that the items that he listed are essential and vital, but the order in which it could be achieved now versus when it was originally conceived, there are too many advances and too many external factors that have been included now alter that. We wouldn't necessarily buy, like, for example, now we wouldn't necessarily have to focus on getting that first floor of just all the businesses first. Like, we can actually attack it from the media aspect first to help influence the first level of getting all those businesses together, because media, it has a lot more power and reach now versus when this plan was originally conceived. So that's like the only real offset I heard from his statements. But for the most part, everything he was saying was on point, and it's that type of truth that needs to be stated.
I think that Dr. Claude Anderson, the components, I think we're all in agreement, right? Of course, buying Black, banking Black, right? Having our own independent Black political institutions. All of that are components that Claude Anderson wasn't the first person to put them forward. We've been saying that ever since Martin Delany and before the Civil War. We haven't been able to achieve it. I think what's important, though, is the new understanding that has emerged, which is, and this is what kind of Beast was alluding to, is that in the current context now, those things, while desirable and good, are completely insufficient. And the reason is, and I'll put it real simply, we went through a dehumanization process in a controlled environment that was dehumanizing to us. Therefore, the solution is going to be going through a rehumanizing process in an equally controlled environment that is conducive. What we're witnessing and what we're talking about is our best attempt to rehumanize ourselves in an environment that's not conducive to our rehumanization. And that, if we don't understand the grand context, right, that the things Claude Anderson is talking about are only going to manifest what we all desire if we can do them in a context, right, that is a controlled environment that is the opposite of the slavery, the Jim Crow environment. And that's where our trying to use the tools, all of the tools, not just the voting in a presidential election, right? Like Teach said, there are a lot of things at the local level, and there are lots of ways to get politically active that aren't voting, right? But you can be you can apply political pressure to your representatives. There's all those things, but it's at the international level where we have the best tools available to us through the international conventions on civil, political rights and other instruments that most of us don't know. We're not using those tools to try to carve out a space for ourselves where we can exercise some form of control, or in the language of international law, autonomy. Now, there are other states in the world right now that are what are called democratic plural societies, meaning the populations are made up of various national minority groups. Under that framework, African American people are a national minority group. And as a national minority group, we have collective rights that if we were to properly demand them, right? In the same way we had a civil rights movement that took decades, but got civil rights. If we were to exercise and demand our national minority rights and force the United States to change its structure, because it's good for the United States to do this. This is how the United States can prevent all the tragedies it wants. You can have spaces within America that have various levels of autonomy, which is a controlled environment where we could then practice what Claude Anderson was saying. We could have banks that are fully plugged into the international system and do not operate on predatory lending practices of American banks. They could be our own, where we could have our business and circulate those things. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, right? Whatever path we walk down is not going to be easy. But if we don't change our framework of thinking that we're internally colonized people, right? We are suffering colonization internally, domestically in the United States. And therefore, as a colonized people, we have rights that other colonized people have used to gain various levels of autonomy. Now, if we were to achieve that, then it would be on us whether we sink or swim. It would be dependent on how good leadership, our thoughts, what we can on our own bring to the table. We will either do better or we will do worse. But at least we will be functioning in the world as a dignified people. That is politics. That is playing politics in the world. For some reason, we think that politics is only played domestically within the United States. We got to get out of that kind of thinking.
All right. So the reason why I showed that video, number one, dialogue conversation, but that's why I keep bringing up every time on the show when we get to the subject of a super PAC. That's the basis of a super PAC. When you get everybody in line together within your community, groom the people within your ranks and send them up into position of power, keep that seat warm while they go up to the state. At the same time, you're starting the conveyor belt. And with all the money that the super PAC raises, can go ahead and buy it at the local level. Then you start working your way up into political runway, as I was stating. You can influence your politics, your issues, and all that stuff. And then you got media and all that. I don't need to go back through all of the video. I'm not going to insult anybody's intelligence on here, but still, that's why it is important and it is crucial. Sorry, I'm a little bit out my element, but if we have something like that where we, like this show is, control our narrative, we won't be bumped into the issues that you be seeing here right now. And I could care less if it's presidential. I think the most important thing what Seepaway was putting, and I think we're all in agreement, is local. The community. If we just can hammer our policies and what will benefit us into our young, and I forgot who brought that point up, like we should be telling our kids, hey, you're going to be a politician. Hey, you're going to be a lawyer. Should be harping that early into them.
I would change that. I say you're going to understand politics. You're going to understand law. Whether you become it, whether that becomes your profession or not, you're still going to have a basic to proficient knowledge of it, so you can still move how you need to move throughout life.
Right. So the reason why Claude Anderson is he's up there in prestige as the ancestor is because he was in politics. He actually explained that when he was I think he was part of the interior down there in Florida, where they elected their very first black mayor. And the mayor was like, he was telling the mayor, like, okay, what's all these promises that you promised at the black folks on you was going to do this and do that, do this and do that. And he's basically just said, hey, I'm in the office now. I need to use them how I need to use them. That's it. He basically quit being his interior, ran with somebody else, and he lost. And so Claude Anderson got skin in the game. He's been there, he's done that. And for him to basically just give us the blueprint on how do we not only just work within the system, but to galvanize our people and let them know if we do come together, keep our dollars within our community, this is what we can achieve. And not only just working within our own community, that we need to communicate with other sectors of the Americas, of Black folks that is either trying to do it or not even doing it. That once
you know how we do it?
Yeah, what's up?
We do it by going back to what Seafway and Professor O were speaking on earlier, knowing your heritage and knowing your history. Because as we're having this discussion, it got my mind thinking other nations and other races follow that motto. And they follow it to a certain degree that allows them that community awareness throughout the nation. They understand that even though they can't attack it from that national, governmental, federal level wholeheartedly, by setting themselves up in communities throughout the nation, establishing that wealth, establishing that influence, establishing that favor, they can pull it together when they need to. But also all these situations are based around heritage. They are allowed to do this by stating that these community centers, these focal points are designed to keep the history of that particular ethnicity or race alive for the next generation. The Asians have always been allowed to do that. They built that up on preserving their history. Same with the Jewish and any other race that has come into America. So I feel like that's one, if not the best way for us to get everyone together, for those that just want to know where they come from, to those that want to get in this political, we all come together under that mantra. That will give us the political footwork to set up what we need to set up on that local level with the community and establish that blueprint across the nation through the multiple communities we need to affect.
All right.
I agree with you, Beast, to this extent that we
I'll be right back,
have
y'all.
lost the core of ourselves.
Agreed.
And what I mean by that is, in his business model, he said, okay, everybody get a business, build business.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear the term, buy black and give back, the first thing I think about is shea butter and incense. So we've lost the hotel industry. At one point in time, we had the bed and breakfasts because we were not allowed in the major hotels. We had our own mechanics. We had everything. We had our own Ubers. Okay, we had everything in our community, from a shoemaker to a millinery, to a seamstress, a tailor, a washing machine repairman. We had everything. But now, today, we have the barbershops and beauty salons. I can get some insurance. I might be able to go and get a set of used tires, get my tire fixed from a black business. I definitely can eat. But when I want to when I want to buy some furniture, every dollar I'm gonna spend is gonna be with another race because I do not know of any black furniture makers in America. Now there's plenty in Africa, but none in America. So for me, that first level of model would have to be diversifying the skill set. That not every young man want to be a ball player and every young woman want to be a hairdresser. We have glutted that market. We need to diversify our skills in every sector of society. That has to be built first, and individually and collectively. We have to come back to ourselves and reclaim the African village in us. We have to stop allowing religion to divide us. We have to remember we are human first. And if you take on Christianity or Islam, that's a secondary nature. That's secondary. So if we just operate on the first level, being human, and if you want to take your Christian ethics or your Islamic principles, they both tell you to love one another. But because you're Christian and that other person is Muslim, you get this kind of mentality towards one another. And your Bible really didn't tell you that, but that's how you practice it. That's how you perceive it. That's how you judge it. That's how you judge other people. So if we just get rid of religion and remember humanity, be human first. Coming from your perspective religion, be human. Be human and everybody can get along. And we can have that global village. One of the things that I thought about furniture because I'm sitting here at my dining room table, but when I was in Cameroon, I went to this man that was a wood carver. And they were cutting down the forest. And basically these white companies come in, take what they want, dump the rest. And it was a cry that went out that said, hey, come do something with this wood. And he began to take the wood and he carved out furniture. And I mean, if I could have it shipped over here, yes, I would have. It is absolutely beautiful. Maybe one day I'll be able to show you the pictures. But from inside furniture to outside furniture, no matter what type of cabinetry you need, he can make it. He can make it, but he makes it commercially. So if we linked up internationally from Cameroon to America to supply our furniture needs, that's one way of buying black and giving back.
Okay.
He needs a market, and we need the furniture. But we need more. My point is we need more than incense and shea butter. We need more than that.
Or weave or something like that. Come close. So my next thing is, it's probably a rhetorical question, but I just want to ask. Is it too simple for us to follow the blueprint of what Clarence Anderson is saying? Because if we follow exactly what he said or any other scholar that's similar to what he's trying to put out, is it too simplistic for us or we just choose not to do it? Like I said, it could be a rhetorical question, but I really just want to just ask that question.
It's a little bit of both. We don't want to do it because we simplistically see it as silly, or we simplistically don't see the value in our own personal life.
I would put in, we got to look, either we were damaged by our 10 generations in America or we weren't. If we're saying that slavery and Jim Crow and all of that was bad, and that it damaged us, right? Then we have to be upfront about, right, our capacity to do all these things that we need to do. Okay. And again, the best scholars of today that have, taken Claude Anderson and then gone beyond it are showing that if we don't look at this from a holistic point of view and understand that these components, if we work on them willy-nilly as best we can with our own resources, it is going to be insufficient to provide the repair. This is why the reparations movement is the most important thing right now, because Teach makes a great point. Where am I going to buy my toilet paper? Where am I going to buy my food? Where am I going to buy my gas and my fuel? Where am I going to buy the things that I use every single day, every single week from the Black community? We can't provide for ourselves, so we're dependent, codependent. We're dependent. So we have to, it's going to be take time, but we have to have a reservoir of resources in the environment where we can focus, where we're at peace. We don't feel like we're a community under threat, constantly being attacked, being victimized by the legal system, every day worrying about bills coming in. You can't take the time and spend the time or invest the time that you need to do to develop the skills or do what you need to do to make your optimal functional contribution to the Black collective if every day you are being economically coerced to be a wage slave to the American system, where you spend 40 hours a week developing somebody else's dream. And then after that, you're tired. You don't have the time and energy left over to do the extra work that's going to be needed to be done to build our collective dream. So if we don't get the resources, it's not just money, it's resources. What I mean by that is commitments, for example, that we're not going to oppress you because you have this level of autonomy that other groups have had, right? We need all of these things. I agree. I would love to implement everything that Claude Anderson has talked about. But in some ways it's too simple. In some ways it's too complex. If we're constantly under attack, if we're constantly don't have peace, we're constantly stressed, we don't have the proper clarity of purpose, then no, it is too complicated for us to implement, as simple as it looks.
Yeah, I just had to ask that question because it just seems like because once again, this election showed it, because we're not ready.
No, hardly not unilaterally. No, we not.
I'm frustrated because I'm gonna tell y'all something. I've been trying to accept a lie to myself, saying that we ready, but this proved we're not ready. And damn it fucking hurts. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cuss. It hurts because we sit here and we just, we go with the flow. Now I'm seeing memes of definitely, because I follow a lot of entrepreneurial people on Instagram where they say, well, this is me if Trump wins, this is me when Biden wins. And I'm like, what does that prove? It's great that you're going to be okay. That's something you keep to yourself. That's something that you put in. Even with my Cowboys, I see a lot of Cowboys fans sit there and say, whoever wins, Cowboys is still America's team. I'm like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that at all. It's like,
No.
Y'all have time to sit there. Y'all post up. You put posts of like your favorite rapper or your what's Wednesday? WCW. I'm not even talking about the wrestling. Woman Crush Wednesday or something like that. But not understanding that if you keep going with the flow, guess what? You're going with the flow. You're not in control. Now you part of the current. And y'all know the current, you can't fight the current. Wherever the current gonna sit you, it's gonna sit you wherever. It's gonna send you over the waterfall, it's gonna send you somewhere upstate. Who knows? I'm just
That's what I
Yeah, go ahead, teach.
That's why I said a few months back, in August, that when I went to the Washington, D.C. March on Washington, revisiting 57 years of Martin Luther King, March on Washington with Reverend Al Sharpton, I said, we're not ready. There was no transformation in the mind as to how to go forward. They felt good with great swelling words and they jumped and danced in the aisle, but had no solution as to how to go forward. And to even show you with this last or second to the last young man that was killed by the police, his parents came out and made a statement that they didn't even want the police officers prosecuted for his murder. I know you all heard that, right?
That. Yeah.
Because I'd have been speaking on that level of coonery.
Yeah, okay. They made a big statement because they don't even want to prosecute it. And I'm scratching my head because I'm like, huh? What? You don't even want them? You don't even want to see justice for your son? You don't even.
That is the equivalent. No, I'm gonna break it down for folk that's like confused, like I am when they hear that. That is the equivalent of community-wise having not an officer but a gang member kill your family member, and then you publicly state, we don't want this gang member prosecuted. I'm sorry, you know a gang member killed your family member. The whole fucking nation knows a gang member killed your family member. By law and the definition of, it is illegal for that gang member to pursue an action like that. So you have the right, the justifiable legal right. And if it was just an actual gang member, I guarantee you they wouldn't said that. So what's the difference? They rag look better than the other one. A cop, what makes a cop better than anybody else for doing an action like that?
I don't know. I think they gave him some money, like here's $3,000, to go away. I think that was some back alley hush money stuff.
Look here.
Because it came out too quick. And there's no way. I mean, as a mother, as an auntie, as a grandmother, there's no way that if my family member with my bloodline was wronged in death, there's no way I could say, oh, it's okay. Just let them, there's no way. There is no way. I think I would be like an old African woman, strip my clothes off naked and holler and scream in the streets. There's no way. But to Stepaway's point, that's part of that brainwashing that persists until this day. Because we're not choosing. Yes, we're not choosing to agitate by whatever means necessary for us to be free in our own space. That that made me wonder about that movie or the title. Why does the cage bird sing?
I take it a step further, Teach, because it makes me think about a song is Ice Cube and Killer Mike. It's called Pressure. And it speaks on a lot of subject matter that we discussed, but at the end it has a voice clip that says, basically, we will always continue to be 20th century slaves until we as Black people are ready to pay the price for freedom. And man asks him, what's the price of freedom? The price of freedom is death. You have to prove that. The easy way to say it is, we as Black people got to tell the white man, I'm willing to not only die for this shit, but I'm willing to drag you to hell to prove the point. And show the conviction that, yes, you are willing to execute those words. I will die for this, and I will drag you to hell with me. Once they understand that, then you start to see changes happen. But we've actually seen that happen throughout history. When presented with extreme forms of brutality or death, the opposing factor decides to fall back.
So, Beast, to the point you just made, to get to that point, like Teach said, this transformation, you're not going to get to that point if you still feel connected and invested to America. If you're still trying to work to make America great, if you're still trying to reform America, you're not going to be willing to die for the thing, because if America is defeated or you attack America, then you're still attacking a part of yourself. So part of the mental transformation, and this is why a number of people, including myself, all across the country were saying, don't vote. It's never going to be a convenient time. This is now the time, right, where we can break from the system without it being a sacrifice, or right. There's an actual propaganda campaign that is being waged by a lot of us to do a psychological operation on our people to try to get them to this point of not being invested in America anymore. So, that part of it, listen, I want to provide hope to you, Donnell, because there's a lot of hope, which is this, okay? What you're frustrated is our community's failure to change their behavior. This is what we're talking about. The example with Claude Anderson is we've got to behave differently. Now, I'm a behavior change expert. I have made a profession, a career. I'm a highly sought after speaker because I'm in the business of helping people change. I work with obese truck drivers, okay? The most obese people occupation in America. And they live
Marge.
Okay? And they live in an environment that is the most unhealthy occupation in America. They live in a box. They don't have access to a kitchen. Okay, they have to they have irregular shifts that are constantly changing their circadian rhythms. What I'm saying is this is an example of what we're facing. You have a group of people who are suffering. They are the victims. Their disease is the obesity. They live in these environments which are conducive to producing obesity, and they have to learn a new behavior in this new environment that's going to protect them and reverse the obesity condition. And I built the number one program in America, number one obesity and weight loss program in America, because I learned the science of behavior change. So we can apply this to the Black community. If we want to get the Black community to change their behavior, you got to understand how to produce behavior change. So watch this. Right? What is it that governs behavior? What is it that produces behavior? I'll tell you, it's your mental programming. Let me give you an example, right? You don't tie your shoe, which is the behavior, and then have the thought, oh, my shoe's untied, I think I need to tie it. You don't do the behavior first and then have the thought. The thought always comes first, and then the behavior follows. Now, the thought can be conscious, can be unconscious, or it can be subconscious. But the mental activity always comes first, and then you produce the behavior. This table in front of me, somebody had to think about it first before it could exist physically. Okay. So if you want to change behavior, you got to change the mental programming. Okay. Now watch this. What is it that governs mental programming?
It could be environment.
Nope.
Internal,
it's your
external.
value. No, it's your values. Your values determine what information you allow into your system, and you give it a high priority, and so therefore you activate it. Your values determine what information you allow into your system, but you deprioritize it. You let it into your system, but you just put it on the shelf. For example, every adult American knows they need to eat right and exercise. Yet the CDC says 80% of adult Americans are not getting the proper amount of exercise. So it's not that they didn't know that they or didn't have the information. They have it, it's in their system, but they don't value it enough, give it a high enough priority to activate it. Okay. And then your values determine what information you reject. You don't even allow it into your system. So if you want to change behavior, you got to change the mental programming. But if you want to change the mental programming, you got to change a person's values. Now, that's where we're having the problem with the Black community. We have been implanted consciously, subconsciously, epigenetically with values that perpetuate this system that actually hurts us. And we're having a hard time breaking from that. What is the evidence or symptoms that a person is breaking from that? One symptom or evidence is people that change their name. Okay. People that change their fashion. Okay. Various forms of what we call cultural nationalism. Okay. Spiritual changes. Okay. These are the kinds of things that we observe in people who are traveling down that path of transforming their mental programming. But here's the key. If you want to change behavior, you got to change the mental programming. But if you want to change the mental programming, you got to change the values. And that's a challenge. But there's one more link in it, which is this. If mental programming is what governs behaviors and values is what governs mental programming, what is it that governs the values? It's culture. Culture, when you're born, you're not born with values. All you're born with is an inherent understanding of natural law, but you're not born with values. Values are what you receive or are taught by the environment or the culture, right? The first teachers of your values are your parents. The second teachers of your values are the community in which you live and where you go to kindergarten and where you go to school, right? And then on top of that, it's the larger society, right, that holds up and honors. This is the culture and this is what we value. So at least by understanding the process for producing behavior, we can then see, well, what's the problem? Do we not have the right mental programming? Well, if that's the problem, then we got to get the right mental programming. If we've got the mental programming, but we're not activating it, then it's a problem of values. Why don't we value the information, for example, like implementing what Claude Anderson said? Why don't we value it enough to implement it? So then we have to assess the values. Now, if we have the values and the mental programming and we're still not doing the behavior, then it's a problem of culture. The culture isn't supporting the values. So the hope here, this isn't an easy here it is. Here's the pill, and it fixes everything. But what I'm trying to say is there are people who understand the actual mechanics, like an engineer, who are working on this as engineers to say, here's how we produce the behavior. One of the areas I'm working at is the mental programming. Not enough of us understand the importance of your lineage ancestors, which is why we started the a lineage restoration movement, right? So we don't know, we literally don't know. Most people can't go back 4 generations in their family, let alone tell the 10 generation story of their family in America. So we've got to get that mental programming in people in order to change their behavior, because we've already observed this scientifically. Those people that have already done it, taken their DNA test, done the genealogy, done this, it produces a different behavior in people. So now what we need to do is come up with a plan, a policy. How do we rapidly provide so that every Black person in America can get that mental programming? These are the kind of things that we should be promoting to the politicians to support. But how can we do that if people don't understand the value? If they're trapped in, I need to promote the kinds of policies that Democrats or Republicans are putting forward. So I just
this is the discussion that, remember when we spoke about the interpreters and the intellects. This is the topic for us, so to speak, you and me being the representation of it. This is the conversation that we need to have. This is our goal, to take that information and relate the material, because that's the biggest issue. And the easy way to solve why people have this, because they don't relate the material to their personal life. I use, for example, geometry. I've always hated it. Never truly understood it as a kid. Still don't really understand it as a man, but I know enough to seem like I'm intelligent. But I will always remember the Pythagorean theorem because how it was presented to me. It was always simple. It's like, hey, it's summertime. You live in a 2-story house. It's 15 feet from your window, and you see one of your homeboys walking down the street, and you got your brand new Super Soaker. Now he's coming up, and by the time you get back to your window, he's going to be about 20, 25 feet away. About how far do you need to aim down to hit him? When I tell you every person in that classroom, you said, 15 from the ground, right? Then 20 from the ground to him, 25? A squared plus B. Yo, to this day, I will always remember that equation. I can always solve it. I can always explain it to somebody. Yes. Because she took that time to relate it and present it in a manner that I would obviously understand. There's no other way I couldn't understand. Even if I was half sleeping there, I knew exactly what she was talking about. So like that's what you're speaking on now. That's what that conversation needs to be had between the intellects and the interpreters, because that way, that will be the way that we get everybody woke, so to speak.
Right. Because
we have the information, and then we can tell them exactly what I as an interpreter, when I speak to teach, I know what to say to her to enlighten her and get her to that path. And the conversation is going to be same, but slightly tailored different for Donnell. Everybody's going to be different, but the same information is going to get reiterated and explained after both conversations. They're both going to know exactly the same thing that I'm talking about. I'm just going to
break it down differently.
Yeah,
break it down differently. That makes sense.
Then when they meet you, they know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. What you're talking about is the language that connects the mental programming to the values.
Mm-hmm.
The information, but in your context, because this is what I got to relate the information to what you value so that you'll apply it.
Correct. TG, anything you got to add?
I just wanted to go back to the election. I knew that the mail-in ballots would be a problem.
Yeah.
I stated that before, and
not
it
drunken
would
Shelby
happen.
and Beast.
It would happen to be that my state, my city, is on the news right now as we speak because Donald Trump wants to challenge the counting of the ballots.
In which state now? Because I already heard Wisconsin.
Michigan.
Yeah,
Detroit.
okay. I was about to ask that because I just recently we saw he was up last night for Michigan, and it was actually projected and presented this morning that he won Michigan. But later on this evening, it said actually Biden's leading in Michigan.
Right. Well, it depends on which station you're looking at. But the case is, one, they had all the mail stacked up in several trucks. And the judge had ordered that all that mail be delivered to the county clerk's office. Well, the postmaster that was appointed by Trump basically interfered with it, but they got it done. And so since they got it done, now Trump wants to come on TV and just lie and say, oh, tens of thousands of ballots just came from out of nowhere. No, they came from out of people's homes.
Craziness.
And they were delivered on time. They tried to obstruct it, but now they filed a lawsuit to stop that person from voting. And for me, that's blatant obstruction. And this is supposed to be the commander-in-chief. This is why we wanted to vote him out. This is why we wanted to vote him out, because he is not good for America. He is not good for the people. The tensions have risen. All of those people that have the seething hatred and racism in them, they found a place and a space under his leadership. And for me, I personally would like to see a leader that would bring unity back to the nation. And the reason why I'm asking for that, if they could shave off the killing of our people, if that saves one life, then that one vote was worth it. If they can quell this bold, I hate you, black person spirit, and put it back underground where it was, then we might somewhat have a chance. Somewhat. I'm not saying 100% fully, because unless we do a real system overhaul or be like the Amish, get our little 2 square miles, put up a big fence, declare our own sovereignty, we're part of these United States of America. And Claude Anderson was not suggesting a closed society, but I have looked at closed societies and they work. But the issue with a closed society is being seen as different. It's not prestigious. It's looked down upon.
It's taboo.
Only in the
It's
American
taboo.
context. Only in the American context. This is where, again, I see so much
Well,
opportunity and hope, because all of the international conventions are supporting the right to be different and have equal status in a pluralistic democracy. So when we don't use those tools that say you have the right to have a closed and different society within the United States of America, for those people who don't want to go the full boat of national independence, there are other alternatives that exist. And so you have the right to be different. In fact, the United States is actually legally bound to protect and provide resources based on your ethnic and linguistic and religious affiliations. Now, again, if you don't know your ethnic affiliation, you can't exercise that. And if you don't know your language, you can't exercise. So what the international context is saying is we are the victims of what is called ethnocide. And you cannot exercise full human rights and dignities if you are the victim of ethnocide and it hasn't been prepared. From the moment your ancestor was brought here, they intentionally destroyed the knowledge of your ethnicity. Now, there are all of these international instruments and rights and protections, and the world community will support us if we utilize them. And it's not just get two small acres, right? We're
well, no. Because here's the thing about that. Because I was thinking, you're both right. No. You're both right, because even though what you're speaking on is international, it's kind of like Mr. O. It's outside looking in. That's cool. But when trying to apply here, you still have to not necessarily conform it, but arrange it with the understanding of the Western philosophies and structure. So the easiest way to handle it here is to take a tribal sense of it for our vernacular. And like T said, get 2 square miles, because that's what the Amish do, but they're spaced out. And they have a unified nation. They have several unified nations amongst the Amish banner.
I just wanted to make sure that we understand this is a collective vision, not just for one small group of our community, right? You can have 2 miles here, 2 miles there. I just want to reiterate.
What you speak on. Yeah, I agree. But you speak on the whole ethnicity part of it. I look at this like long term. Like for those that are actively have that passion, but that's not something either. They have the finances. Yeah, but they don't have the means to. Yeah, they ain't got the means to just say, fuck it all. But the 2 square miles thing, that's feasible.
Yeah, it's feasible.
That can be pulled off. Get everybody together, pool your resources, then getting individuals like you who are knowledgeable with the genetics and the ancestral linkage. Once those involved find out where they specifically derive from, then they themselves, if inspired, can start moving forward down the path that you're speaking of and start incorporating that international aspect more and start strengthening it.
Well, there's a way to do this in a coordinated fashion where those who are ready now can move. And over the next 25 years, there's a coordinated effort to prepare people because everybody's in a different stage, right? But if we don't leverage the unity and coordination, right, we've already seen what happens. So there has to be at least an overriding arching framework or plan. Not everybody will realize the value of the plan at the same time. But if you don't have that, right, then what we're talking about is haphazard Band-Aid solution here, Band-Aid, and that doesn't work. So there is a plan. There is a way to do this in a coordinated fashion where, and I believe that within the next year you'll see some of the early fruits, the harvest of it. But also it's comprehensively planned for the next 25 years.
Yeah, I understand that. But the question I asked is kind of more in line with what T spoke on. And it kind of goes back to that. How many of those individuals are communicating with individuals like T speaks of that just have the knowledge and the foresight to just secure land here since we're here and set up something here? And it's like, okay, what you're doing is good and it's good for down the line. But for those of us that's not at that place to execute it yet, but still trying to get something together, like I said, I don't see why both plans can't correlate with each other and become like almost an assembly line structure.
Exactly. In the spaces that I inhabit, I'd say that the communication is pretty high, relatively speaking, to say the past 20 years.
I'm talking talks with communities that have already either been set up or in the process of setting up to get some kind of trade system going with knowledge and resources. Yeah, I guess the real question I'm asking. Because I believe that when you say that there is a plan and a structure, and that's a long-term plan. And most plans that we as Black folk need to be long-term. So there's nothing wrong with that at all. But for those of us that don't have the foresight or the true understanding or even the situation to allow that long-term thought, there still has to be something set up for the here and now that still allows them to stay along that path to some degree. Like they know they're not going to get there now, but they can still, I can't get to Africa, but hey, I got this land over here right now that it's just me. The government don't have no control over. We can build from there. And hopefully in my lifetime, I can end my life over in Africa.
All right, I'm sorry, I hate to do this.
Yeah, go ahead, T. I just wanted to finish that last part. Go ahead, T.
Make it quick. I'm trying to get y'all all out in time, but go ahead real quick.
I'll just what my mind think of in the rise of racial tension. It's not the first time racial tension has risen in this country. It puts me in the mind of the Exodusters and Pap Singleton. When it got hot, he said, for $6, I can take you to Kansas and Oklahoma. And the people paid the money. They picked up whatever they had and they left. So when situations are dire, people move right then on the spot. Sometimes they have to make a decision. Man, come home. Pack what you can carry and we out of here in 10 minutes. So what is the 10-minute plan? I need the 10-minute plan.
All right.
Have you observed? I just want to know, I've been seeing a lot more media where that's exactly what people are doing. I'm seeing a whole lot of YouTube videos of I packed up, I went to Africa. So I'm saying, I think that movement that you mentioned has already started happening, right?
Yes, it is. It is.
And it's happening for other reasons, because I know the videos that you're speaking of, and most of those videos are more in line of just prior to all of this,
right?
That's going on now.
All right. Okay. So, just want to get y'all out here. Just going to end this on time because plenty of shows we went overtime. So I'm just gonna say a statement and then y'all just finish. All right. So it starts like this: after the election, Black people will start with Sleepaway.
after the election, black. Okay, can I qualify it? I want to say after the election. I think Biden's going to win the election. So I'm going to make my statement. I'm going to finish that. After the election and Biden becomes president, black people will have a false sense of optimism and will continue their reform efforts instead of moving further down the path towards self-determination.
Okay. Beach Johnson?
After the election, regardless of who wins, honestly, black folk in general gonna keep doing what we've been doing, living, striving, surviving, and looking for whatever immediate to quick route to success with minimal effort. We feel like we done put in enough fucking work in America, so any quick side hustle I can do is well worth it. It's my manifest destiny.
Teach?
Pretty much things are going to remain the same. Those that are sick and tired, they're packing and they're leaving. And those that aren't sick and tired, they're partying, can't wait to get back in the club or whatever have you. And those that are sick and tired, but they're guided by strategy, they're planning and they're making their plan and they'll implement their plan. Gotcha. So basically, different president, same business.
SSDD.
And for me, and then we're going to close it off. For me, after the election, black people going to be doing the same exact thing that everybody say on this panel. It's no ifs, no ands, no buts about it. I think people just want to get to a plateau of normalcy. So I can't add on to that what everybody else said. I agree with everybody. But other than that, tune in with us on Friday where we find out who is going to be the president of the United States. So on behalf of myself, Daniel Monte Morris, Seepaway, Teach, aka Teach, Anita Joe, and Beast Johnson. Thank y'all for tuning in to this another edition of Hashtag
Get your wine, get your liquor, get your beer, because it's going to be some shenanigans.
It's already started.
And I ain't going to be the only person with an upset stomach and a headache come Saturday morning.
Catch y'all later. Y'all
so join me.
So have a good one.
Have a good one. Y'all
All right,
good.
everybody have a good night.
Bye, baby.
All right.